And I can't find a seconder usually when I propose this, but I don't care. I don't need a seconder. My own opinion is enough for me, and I claim the right to have it defended against any consensus, any majority, anywhere, any place, any time. And anyone who disagrees with this can pick a number, get online, and kiss my ass.
Baptist is more.
Allies may be slipping as the president hints that Attorney General William Barr could be next in his post-election purge of officials who won't back his claims of voter fraud.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services to be performed are greater than the legal services provided by other lawyers. I'm Harry Steele, the Backwoods Southern Lawyer. You've found the Backstory Podcast. Got Mr. Paul Ripp, my client and compatriot here in studio. How are you, Mr. Ripp?
Very good, representing the Ripp Report and Baldwin County Legal Eagle.
And Mr. Russian, I guess you got the hell out of the state unscathed. Are you back in Houston safely?
I made it. Yeah, I'm back in Houston. Got my car back, COVID free. So I'm calling it a good trip.
So to kick off the day, we had a Georgia state election official come forward this week and ask the president to please stop inspiring people to commit acts of violence. Are you familiar with what's going on over there in Georgia?
Yeah, you also.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Something
Ryan.
to say. It's I saw those impassioned remarks, and I'm glad that you could really tell that gentleman had no aspirations for higher office, and that was truly an impassioned plea for somebody to say something about backing it off with the death threats and the emails. I saw some of them and was fairly appalled at some of the stuff I saw. I mean, I talk a good game, but I would never send someone a death threat. And there are people on that elections board that have had their kids threatened and things like that. It's time for national leadership or somebody, or at least the governor, somebody to come out and say, hey, this has got to stop. But none of them, of course, are going to do it. I was glad to see that man have the courage to do it and be as impassioned as he was about it to really get his point across.
So the Georgia Senate Oversight Committee held hearings yesterday on election fraud and irregularities. And let me say this, Rudy Giuliani was a terrible choice for his skills in the courtroom. But as I watched this hearing, he was treated like it would have been no different, or he wouldn't have been treated any more venerably if it had been Abraham Lincoln in the damn room. The way those people kissed his ass. I'm talking about the chairman of this committee kept asking, well, Mr. Mayor, is there anything else that you'd like to tell this committee? And he basically ran that committee meeting for about 3.5 hours or what I watched of it. And what I saw was a bunch of people who were concerned about the election who did not understand what they were witnessing. And I don't want to get too much in the weeds in it, but how their election machines work, and the fact that the what do they call them, Raines? The little iPad tablets that you use when you check in.
Scanning validators.
Those are definitely connected to the internet. Anyway,
and they did a total of 3 votes there.
You wouldn't believe the crazy. If you got 4 hours of your life to waste, go watch those committee hearing meetings because it was absolutely unbelievable. The things they put forward as the truth.
And the votes have been counted there 3 times, more than any other state. All 3 came out the same way.
So, Paul, we got a local dipshit.
Uh-oh.
Have you heard Mo Brooks is planning to challenge the Electoral College votes? He claims Donald Trump won the election college by a significant margin, and Congress's certification should reflect that.
Wasn't Mo Brooks the one who was talking about how when the rocks in the Antarctic fall into the ocean, it causes the sea to rise and we may be
Yes,
flooded?
that's the same. That's the same guy. Yes, Paul, you are
Okay.
absolutely correct.
Okay,
about
I'll stop right there then.
So, Paul, I got a good one for you.
All right.
A sheriff in California, similar to our sheriff that you drug into court for his refusal to enforce the state restrictions related to COVID-19.
Right.
So this sheriff in California, Sheriff Jones, is guess where?
Where?
In the hospital with COVID-19. He did the same thing in California.
Well, speaking of sheriffs, last week, Escambia County, Florida, a felon was fleeing from the police there. They caught up with him. There was, he pulled a gun on the officers and he was killed. Immediately, on site, the sheriff declared that the investigation was being handed over to the Florida Highway Patrol independently of them for a further investigation. That's how it's supposed to happen.
That's batshit crazy, Paul. How are they going to get away with it?
They're not.
If there was any wrongdoing.
If there was any wrongdoing, that's what we lack here in Baldwin County. There's no transparency whatsoever. Sheriff's Department is not being coming forth with the information they should after all of these incidents, and it's putting a bad light on the other officers that I don't think want to go along with it.
All right, coronavirus numbers.
Before you get too far off that sheriff,
Yeah.
let me tell you a little bit about. He's the sheriff of the county where Sacramento is. That's the state capital of California, and a lot of people in California tell you that Sacramento is the biggest small town you'll ever live in. So the parallels between Sheriff Mack and this sheriff in California are pretty spot on. I will say this though, I conducted an investigation for about 2 hours this morning, and I found a diametric difference between these two sheriffs. One, they both share this sentimentality that they are not going to enforce, even though Sheriff Mack said during a hearing that he would. They're not going to spiritually enforce any kind of lockdown law or any kind of COVID restriction or anything else. The biggest difference is the sheriff in California, his department accepted $3.9 million from the state to equip themselves with PPE, to add extra hours for officers to patrol the streets and enforce said law. Now, how you can take money to enforce a law and funding to enforce a law and yet not spend that money to enforce it, I think begs a deeper investigation. I can say that while Sheriff Mack has not exactly waved the flag on enforcement, his department hasn't taken any money from the state meant to bolster that law. Governor Ivey's CARES Act did not authorize discretionary spending for law enforcement before emergency first responder departments like volunteer fire departments and paramedics and EMTs. There's been no law enforcement money doled out. So if you see in this, when she asked for the Congress to give her an extension on her $1 billion, make sure that no money is going to sheriff's departments to enforce the law that have announced that they won't enforce it. I think that's something we as Backstory Podcast need to stay on the front line of.
Okay, well, Raines, when you try to go in the probate office here in Bay Minette, there is a Bay Minette police officer sitting right inside the door who asks you what your business is and where you're going. But the city of Bay Minette is not supplying that man for no money. So I'll assure you there's coronavirus money that was authorized for local governments, and they're using it to pay for people like that.
Well, now,
No doubt.
on the coronavirus, last week we also spoke about the same money Governor Ivey had on that Revive Plus.
Today's the deadline.
Well, I applied for it.
Good.
You guys said you wanted to track it, so I figured we'd track
Right on, Paul. Thanks for doing that.
We'd track it with an application. It was fairly simple and straightforward. In fact, I found doing the computer part of it a little bit more difficult than anything else, transferring the documents and so on and so forth. But it was pretty straight up. The, time and length that you're in business, what type of business, how were you impacted. which I thought was, how are you impacted? Dear God, everybody in the United States was impacted, But anyway, I'll let you know what happens with that.
So 65,627,738 cases globally with 1.5 million deaths. The U.S. clocking in at 14,218,000 with 277,412 deaths.
And yesterday or day before, there was 3,157 deaths, which is almost 1,000 more deaths in one day than the entire country of Japan has had entirely. They had 2,161. With 100, we have also hit the numbers of 100,000 hospitalization with an extra 200,000 in cases. Expected by December 26 to be somewhere between 303,000 and 329,000 lives lost. For God's sakes, people wear a mask.
So, Raines, do you know the difference in inclusivity and exclusivity?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, this is what kind of rubs me. Because of current pressures for social justice, the Royal Society of Literature has added 2 new pens to their eminent group, Andrea Levy and Jean Riles, to champion writers of color.
Right.
Anyway, I think it's gone too far. I mean, there are lots of people that have written books better than these.
No comment.
Okay, well,
I hadn't read it.
The Royal Society of Literature concerns me politically about as much as NAMBLA. So.
Okay, well, that's the difference in inclusivity and exclusivity. When you start adding people to the rolls because of arbitrary reasons like skin color, you lose me. You lose me.
So and just like that 11-pound mossy back monster that sits at the back of Bird's Landing, I don't have no kind of need or want to mess with your bait this morning.
I understand.
Go, Raines, go. I love it when we get on the show and he just pops his stuff up. You don't even know what the hell's coming.
So we did a podcast episode about the Lincoln Project, which are a bunch of conservatives who got together to kill Donald Trump or kill his political
a bunch
campaign.
of Republicans, not a bunch of conservatives, a bunch of Republicans.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
No, they are.
Anyway, they are political operatives who are Republicans and still
Correct.
claim to be, but refuse to go back to the party of Trump. So they've started their own podcast. And while I hate to send business elsewhere, interesting and something that I would check out if I were you. So, Paul,
let me give a caveat. Let me give a caveat to that.
Okay.
I believe that our average viewer, and our viewers are anything but average. I apologize already for making that statement. I think our viewers and subscribers are exceedingly above average. The Lincoln Project podcast is very specific. Ours is, if you had to use us as a base, we're very diverse. We talk about a lot of different things. We talk about national. We talk about local. We talk about the weather sometimes. The Lincoln Project is for people who are deeply steeped in political operations. I love the Lincoln Project's podcast. For people that enjoy our podcast, you might not like the Lincoln Project podcast because it's like watching a stock market or an economist go on and on. How Harry and I could sometimes get bogged down in legal stuff. If you turn off backstory when that happens, don't bother with the Lincoln podcast. But there are a couple of them. There are a couple of them on there, the Lincoln Project, that have been monumental. And I'll have Harry link those on our social media publishing for this podcast later today.
So, Paul,
Yep.
Remember we talked about the vaccine and who was going to take the vaccine and who wasn't going to take the vaccine.
Right.
So we got breaking news that Clinton, Bush, and Obama will take COVID-19 vaccine live on television.
Well, that'll send a message.
But What if they all kill over dead on live television?
Well, that's going to be the message. I mean, that's what they're willing to put
There it is,
themselves
Paul.
out for. That's what they're.
There it is.
That's what they're willing to put themselves
That will
out
be
for.
the message.
I'm not the one to talk. Like I said before, I'm not the one to talk to vaccines about. I have had. I mean, like I said, I went to Europe.
They gave you that big old shot that long before you went to Nam.
Well, it wasn't that. I mean, before I was 10, I'd been back and forth to Europe 3 times. Every time you had a series of shots you had to go through. My father was
Yeah,
in the
battery,
military.
you know.
Yeah, so you had to take all those. And then when I went to Vietnam, it was another whole bunch of shots. And then when I went to Belize, it was another whole shot. So I'm taking the vaccine. I will let them take it first, though. All right.
So the only thing I wanted to reiterate was the $1 billion unspent, 200,000 of it. Your deadline is today.
Well,
Governor Ivey has made. She's been back channeling an extension through Congress, and you're going to get a break on that because of the holiday adjournment. Yes, the deadline is today. I can almost guarantee an extension through the first of the year.
I hate it when and we're going out of order, Paul. I'm sorry, but we're going to have to. There's just too good of a segue into this to not do it. So you'll recall we have been telling you for months that Chris Elliott and the sheriff have both peeved off the governor on because of different reasons. But there's in the Beltway Beat, Jeff Poor.
Great.
Wrote an article. Remember that time the state of Alabama was going to build a bridge to replace the existing I-10 Mobile Bayway, and it failed miserably because the governor and her administration made the ridiculous proposition of levying a $6 per way toll on travelers? That is the question. So what did you take away from this thing, Mr. Rip?
Well, what I took away from it is the relationship that Chris Elliott seems to have with the sheriff. Here we are, Baldwin County, probably contributing more than any other county through tourism and taxes and everything else. And we have our state senator and the sheriff both bucking the governor. I just don't see that being a benefit for Baldwin County at all. I really don't. I mean, if you want to get in a peeing contest with the governor, I don't believe you're going to win.
It certainly hasn't done anything for us down here in Baldwin County.
No.
To have the governor who's a South Alabama girl. Hell, she's from Camden. She drinks bourbon. We like her. She's affable. She's intelligent. Why would you want to make this woman mad?
I have no idea.
And she's got her damn hands full. The last thing she'd want to deal with is some dipshit sheriff that won't enforce her orders, and some guy like Chris Elliott. Just don't understand it.
I believe Chris Elliott has a little relationship there as well with the sheriff. I believe his wife works for the sheriff, so that makes for a cozy relationship.
Some people just come out of the womb with a mission to hairlip the governor, no matter who it is. So.
Yeah.
So I got The Hill, and this is all on my Twitter handle. Trump administration proceeds with rollback of bird protection despite objections from environmentalists.
Well, I didn't read that one.
Okay, well, I'm just saying there's all kinds of things we're trying to do before we get out of office.
More lame stuff from a lame dick president.
No comment.
No comment. All right. Did you guys watch 60 Minutes last week? Africa Town History on 60 Minutes. It was very interesting. That was the November 29th episode. They did give Ben Raines a shout out in that. I was glad to see that. And it looks like they're going to raise that ship, or they're sure as world going to do something with tourism surrounding it. And I don't think anyone should ever forget that part of the history. And good luck to them for
There was a component of the story that I didn't think was very fair, or
that was.
Well, Anderson Cooper went after the Mayer family who
Oh yeah,
who paid for the expedition to get these people and bring them over here. Okay, slaves,
Right.
in
Call them
1860.
what they are.
correct.
So when what's a good way to say it? So when they interviewed some of the descendants, they said, "Yeah, see, this proves it was a crime." And I'm going, "It was a crime at the time, which is why they set the damn ship on fire and let it burn to the waterline and sink." There, it has always been considered a crime, and the idea that Anderson Cooper announced that he did a quick study and the land holdings of the Mayer family are $34 million, and implying there should be reparations made by these people who were not born when the last person brought over here died. They had nothing at all to do with it. And the Mayers are good corporate citizens. If you've ever been to Mayer Park down there on the Causeway across from Five Rivers,
I was going to say,
believe
that's
the
a
Five Rivers is
state
sitting
park.
on their property
State park.
that they donated.
Yeah, yeah.
So the idea that we're going to go after some people for something their great grandparents did is asinine. And I thought it was going to be a very positive story about the history, and it wasn't. It was. I thought it was. It turned pretty ugly there towards the end. I was disappointed in the story, having covered it since before they announced the discovery of the ship.
Well, I think you're a little bit more sensitive to the issues then.
Well, because I know these people.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying.
All right. Well,
No, I didn't mean that derogatory. I just meant that you know a lot more about it.
so let's do some lagniappe, Paul.
Okay. Well, one thing I want to mention is this was last week. Whatever suits you. Fairhope modifies the Christmas parade and aligns litigation attorneys. That is by Gabe Times. One thing that we didn't mention, or I want to re-mention, is they listed the lawsuits that the city is facing, City of Fairhope, and the biggie is the Charter Oak Fire Insurance Company versus City of Fairhope, filed in federal court in March of 2019. The plaintiff seeks to indemnify himself of losses potentially incurred by the city in the separate lawsuits, Charles K. Breland versus City of Fairhope. In that case, which stretches back to 2001, Breland claimed he was unlawfully prohibited from developing his property off a Hurd Road. According to a status report filed October 30th, an appeal of the Breland case remains pending in the Alabama Supreme Court, and the Charter Oak case is pending that appeal. If Mr. Breland wins that case, the City of Fairhope could be on the hook for millions and millions of dollars, and that is back to the Kant administration many years ago, when they just arbitrarily, capriciously, just would stop people from developing the property. The other pending lawsuit over there is the Paula Donardi versus Ronan McSherry. I think everybody knows that Barstool case. It's unreal that is still going, and from what I understand, Mr. Ronan McSherry was granted until, early part of next year to even face the intoxication charge that he had. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's pretty fishy. And another one of the
Fishy.
lawsuits,
That's a very generous perspective
Yeah.
on things, Mr.
Yeah,
Rip.
yeah.
Very generous indeed.
and then another one for the City of Fairhope, which I think is real interesting because of the waterfront project that's in discussion over there now, is Carl Black versus City of Fairhope, filed earlier this month in circuit court. The plaintiffs claiming breach of contract, fraud, eminent domain, inverse condemnation after the city allegedly broke the terms of the lease for his 2 boat slips at the city docks, including demolishing improvements that he had made. The city has not answered the case. Anybody that's been down, we're talking about the waterfront. They have $6.2 million to spend on it. Some people don't want to do anything. I suggest that you go down to the Fairhope Pier and look. The water lines, electric lines are still in the water. The place is damaged. The marina had like 5 boats sunk with all kind of damage around it, and no one's done anything. Harry, where's that little article you had about the about that bulkhead at Fairhope?
Oh my
I can
goodness.
explain it, but what year was that?
This is a pamphlet that was put out in 1938, I believe, by the Bank of Fairhope.
Bank of Fairhope.
Yeah, let me find that little article about the bluff.
I thought this was real interesting.
What do you know about South Alabama? And it says Fairhope's electric lighted pier, the longest on the Alabama coast, now stands where it now stands. There was once a levee a little more than 100 years ago when Alabama City stood on the location of present-day Fairhope on Mobile Bay. A clay and sand levee was built to deep water for the accommodation of pleasure seekers and shipping. And I'll show you a picture of that. What they did was they went down there and put sheet pile in and filled it in with dirt, if that makes sense. They built a causeway out into the water.
Like a cofferdam.
Right. And where did they get the material? From up on the bluff, the historic bluffs that we're all trying to protect now.
And
so anyway, when you claim you know your history and you moved to Baldwin County 30 years ago, you don't know jack.
So let me
This is just
explain to
something
you.
that's laying around
This is
my cousin's house.
This is 1938. So when you look at the picture, a cofferdam,
And it says 100 years ago.
right? A cofferdam is when they put the pylon side by side and then fill the inside of it up. It looks like a bulkhead from the inside. I mean, from the outside, but it is a cofferdam as well. And when you look at the photograph, what they did was they pushed the dirt from the top of the hill straight down the hill, filled up the cofferdam to make the first pier, and they also
Causeway.
and they graded on both sides, creating the park. So when they start talking about the historic bluff, well, then let's go back 100 years and condemn them for doing the bluff, for taking the bluff out.
Pain in the ass, Quakers.
Right. It's a bank, and they get on one side that they want to have the walkways. They have two ridiculous wood walkways, must be 80, 90 steps up on both sides. Nobody can get, you have to pretty much stop halfway up to get your breath to go the rest of the way, and it's wood. And they've been replacing that for the last 25 years. So hopefully they do come up with ADA compliance. We at the RIP Report have filed a Freedom of Information request with the city of Fairhope for all of the data that was accumulated in the last administration referring to the water, the park project and how people voted. And then we also requested there were 2 weeks given now for written in information. We requested that too. So once we get that in our hands, we'll let you know.
So I want to do a couple more out of this little book while you got me on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Remember the water tower up here next to the jail
yeah,
in Bay Minette?
yeah.
So it's in here. It says the goblet-shaped tower, which supplies Bay Minette with water from deep, pure wells, is said to be the only concrete monolith of its kind and shape in existence.
Good grief.
Of course, that son of a bitch has got to go because we've got to build a new jail tower.
I know, but that's the only one period that looks like that. You're going to take it down for a jail.
Got another one for you. Some years ago, there stood near Fly Creek in Baldwin County an amazing pine tree so large that 15 people were required to reach around it. When lightning killed the old tree, Spring Branch Big Pine, as it was called, was cut into short lengths and rolled down to a nearby sawmill where it was split into wedges-shaped pieces before it could be fed into the saws. One cut produced enough lumber to build a good-sized house. The bark on this tree was 11 inches thick. God.
What a monster.
Okay, speaking of monsters,
Uh-huh.
now the
Some
south
big
end, now near the south end of the tip of Baldwin County, the weather uncovered an ancient burial ground and exposed to view skeletons of a race of Indians 8 feet tall. Ponce de Leon asked the Florida East Coast Indians to direct him to the Fountain of Youth. They told him it lay to the west in a land inhabited by Indians who were giants. So, all kinds of great little stuff in this book. I'll take some pictures of it and put it online. I'm going to try to talk my cousin into giving it to the Baldwin County Archives and History Department.
Back to 1938.
While we're on the Delta, there was an article by Mike Thompson, Saving America's Amazon, the threat to our nation's most biodiverse river system. And I'm just going to read you a portion of this. The area of our Amazon was so vast that it seemed able to survive the changes brought by logging, coal and iron production, and cotton farms, large and small. The rivers became transportation arteries, and by the early 20th century, the focus of dam construction to facilitate waterborne construction and hydroelectric generation power generation. The many fish that thrived the long distances up the river to spawn no longer could do so, but there were so many different fish that surely they could work it out. They did not and still cannot. The migrating fish died and were replaced by non-native breeds, some of which were environmentally disastrous or dead in the muddy water of the dammed up streams. An industrial activity grew in the 20th century, and its waste products destroyed clear rivers, but there was so much water, it seemed it could handle the challenge. Industries, many foreign-owned, built plants adjacent to the rivers to facilitate waste disposal. Some were supplying new poisons to the natural environment, but surely it would all work out as it always did. Anxious for the economic benefits, we looked the other way until a few citizens took on the pollution and environmental destruction. There were no oysters. The Delta was home to invasive plants and animals. The causeway was a giant earthen dam, robbing the bay and delta of their ability to accommodate native salt and freshwater plants and animals. Mud filled the rivers and creeks. Clear streams existed only in people's memories, if at all. At the end of the 20th century, more and more of Alabamians faced the reality of what we were going to do and had to be done. But what could we do? That was 100 years ago. They were facing those challenges. So what have we done, Paul? We've got a pile of coal ash that it would take 30 years running 300 dump trucks a day to take it to a lined landfill in Mississippi.
And the people in charge of the coal ash are saying they know better than anybody else in the United States, and don't worry, nothing will happen.
Don't worry.
Don't worry.
All right, it's on you, man.
All right, more on the lagniappe. This time, believe it or not, we agree with the tax man. Third time's a charm. Local legislators show support for medical marijuana by Dale Leash. You know, this came up a couple of times. Almost made it through the last time. This time it looks very, very good. Senator Chris Elliott from Fairhope said he voted for the bill and would do it again if given the chance. He said, I have family members going through medical issues, and I understand that it can certainly help issues. One thing he did say I find interesting is Elliott said that he has not discussed the bill in detail, but since it has passed the Senate twice, he believes the House might have to act on it. Well, if it's passed the Senate twice, how come he has not read it? Okay. Other people, Greg Alberton, Republican Nat Moore, he's for it. Sam Jones, Mobile, he's for it. Chris Pringle is. Shane Stringer is saying he needs to read a little bit more. Most agree that the Compassionate Act, as it is known, should be passed. And Representative out of Mobile, Barbara Drummond, she's also for it.
So, Paul, I have read the bill. Can I tell you what the problems are?
We'll get into a long part of it. It hasn't passed yet, but go ahead.
Well, it does not allow for medical cannabis to be smoked, vaped, or put into baked goods to be used. Rather, the legislation would permit patients to take a gel cube pill or nebulizer.
Right.
Okay, well, that's one component. The other component of it is there are going to be a limited number of dispensaries.
Correct.
Which is highly coveted and likely to generate bribes. I mean, if it's medicine and we're treating it like medicine, why can't every pharmacy in the state of Alabama dispense it?
And it makes you wonder too why we're reinventing the wheel. This is already done a half a dozen.
And
or
we're
more
doing
states.
it completely different than any other state has ever done it.
Right.
Let me jump in there before you guys get too far, because this happened when y'all were getting the podcast together earlier. The House of Representatives today, about an hour and 45 minutes ago, voted to decriminalize marijuana at the federal level.
What?
Yep. It's going to have to go to the Senate now, but this is a bill that Jerry Nadler introduced back in July. And it's not a broad-based, we're just going to take marijuana off the table and it's all good now. What it does is that it stops the conflict that came where states would decriminalize marijuana, but it was still illegal at the federal level. It basically erased that conflict.
Correct.
So do you remember the guy we talked about in New Jersey? He owned 13 different dispensaries, and he is doing like 25 years in prison because of Jeff Sessions going after him personally because he was a marijuana dispenser. Now, he was completely legal in all the states where he had dispensaries. It was the fact that it was illegal at the federal level.
Correct.
So
Correct.
surely those kind of people are going to get out and drive straight to Jeff Sessions' house and give him the bird.
Yeah, it's a straight shot. Now, because of the political climate right now, it's probably not going to see any action until next year in the Senate. The biggest opposition to it coming from both sides of the aisle is that why are you passing this sort of legislation when we're still looking to push through some sort of stimulus deal to help the economy, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I could go on about it for hours, but because of that political maneuvering, it's not going to go anywhere right now. However, I think you'll see it under the Biden administration in 2021. I believe you will see this bill come to fruition, and we will see the end of that conflict as far as marijuana goes at the state level.
Well, we'll keep our eyes on it to see what goes on at the
By
federal
all
level.
means, keep an eye on it.
Okay,
And,
I got one more out of order, Paul.
Go ahead.
This is for Raines. Police in Jackson County, Mississippi won't access the live home security video, alarming privacy advocates. We've talked about this before, but here's an actual article. If you guys want to go check it out, that's on NBCnews.com. Go for it, Paul.
Another one in Lanyap, and is mystery still unsolved. The male sperm whale that stranded in Mobile Bay was euthanized. There was a pretty good article there talking about what they were up against. You got to remember that this animal is 33 and a half feet long. So, you know, they're saying, well, why did you have to euthanize it? Why didn't you drag it out to the ocean open? Any ropes or tethers used in rescue attempts are hard to or impossible to remove once you get them out in the deep water. In many cases, animals that have been rescued in this way strand themselves again a short time later due to the original illness or injury. The animal's now been secured on private property, and I would imagine they're going to keep an eye on it because...
You reckon they'd give me a tenderloin if I ask for one?
No, but I can tell you what people will do. They'll go out there and try
Get
to
the
get
bones.
they'll get a vertebrae.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen vertebraes make these big tables and stuff. That's what they're worried about.
What if we built a fire and had one of those big-ass rib roasts like they have on the Flintstones that turns a car over?
I don't know that I would be willing to eat that fish.
Yeah, you know, you've got a dead whale. There's two things you don't want to do with it. One, as the people of Oregon taught us back in 1985, you don't want to blow it up with dynamite.
All right.
Everybody remember that the first famous internet video was the whale
Blowing
exploding.
the whale up because they couldn't move it.
And the second thing you don't want to do is light a whale carcass on fire. You would be
'Cause it
better
would
off
burn
lighting
for-
that would burn for weeks.
Tire
You'd be better
pile.
you'd better off lighting a tire pile on fire. It would smell better. Yeah, I've got to inject a little lanyap for y'all. It was an article that just moved a little while ago, but it ties into what we talked about with COVID. Doug Jones held a press conference just a little while ago, and he talked about the availability of the newest Pfizer vaccine, and it brought up something I think is rather intriguing. The state of Alabama is going to get around 48,000 doses of the Pfizer vaccine when it comes available in the next week. The problem with it is there are only 16 facilities in the entire state that are capable of storing it. Now, you think to yourself, this is
Tyson
some kind
chicken.
of political bull crap, whatever. Let me tell you something. The Pfizer vaccine has to be stored at negative 112 degrees Fahrenheit.
Ooh.
Do you know how cold that is?
I'm surprised there's 16 locations, tell you the truth.
You can't keep that in a freezer. The antibodies will die. That's the point. So anybody who goes and waves the flag saying it's political and people aren't going to get it, you are looking at a vaccine that is so fragile that from the time you move it out of the frozen facility in which you keep it to the point that you put it in some sort of applicator, you run the risk of it dying.
Wow.
Hide and watch, hide and wait, hedge your bets, wear a mask. The Moderna vaccine only has to be held at about negative 18 degrees Fahrenheit, and it will be much more widely available. Let the first round of vaccine go to the people that really need it. Don't make waves about, hey, I want to get this vaccine so I can go to church. I want this vaccine so I can go to the bar. The people that need it are the ones most at risk. And by God, I don't know about how the efficacy is going to be on something that's that fragile. So wear your mask, sit back,
Please.
read the article in the Lagniappe that just came out today on their digital edition about Doug Jones's press conference. You want to talk about somebody doing something that's important when they're on their way out. Doug Jones is kind of setting the example, talking about how important this vaccination process is going to be. Alabama is looking at 2,500 new cases per day. 1 in 10 is going to the hospital. Alabama's going to get overwhelmed soon. You've got to give the infrastructure a chance to get the vaccine to you. There, that's it.
All right.
While we're on the Bay, let's talk about A Field of Dreams on the Bay. Damn the Torpedoes, the editorial by Rob Holbert, is all about this this purchase. The city of Mobile purchases Brookley property.
Right.
Part of it for use as a waterfront park, part of it to expand the Brookley Aerospace industrial site. Some of it's going to be used for, let's say, 25 and 21 acre of the 300 acre totals. Some of it will, $2 million came from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation. Others came through the Restore Act, and still more came through the Go Mesa funds, funding following the Deepwater Horizon oil spill. So this is a 300-acre piece of property. The Industrial Development Board will take over a portion of it, and the rest of it will be open for park space. And just looking at the property online, it looks like how much waterfront do you think that is, Paul?
It looks like quite a bit, and it looks like it's got a good bit of sand
Like
on that side.
3/4 of a mile.
Yeah, it looks like there's got
On
quite
the
a bit
bay.
of sand. There's also an accompanying article to that, Oh Happy Bay. It's the same one you're talking about. It's not by Rob, though. City purchases Brookley property for use as a waterfront park, and that's by Dale Leash.
And let's say they bought it from USA Foundation, University of South Alabama Foundation. They didn't buy it from it'd have been, if this was held by a private corporation, the price tag would have been astronomical.
Right. And that's that looks like that's quite an addition, too. And, people were just giving you the highlights of some of these articles, so be sure to get your Lagniappe. Another one that's in Lagniappe this week, and this is very biggie, too, goes right in line with that, is coming soon. Orange Beach seeks to fast-track public beach access project by Gabe Times, right where 161 comes into 98 there. If you go straight ahead, there was a failed condo project there, 8.7 acres, and this is in Orange Beach, and it's going to be developed by Coast Alabama, and they are the same people that own Floribama and the club or bar that's going to be there is going to be modeled after Shunk Gully Oyster Bar on Highway 30A. And I always thought Shunk Gully sounded familiar. And then one of my diving buddies said, "Don't you remember that's where we used to catch lobster? There's little reefs right out in front there that they called Shunk Gully." Mayor Kennan said that they paid $12 million. They're going to pay $12 million over 3 years for the portion of the sale, adding that the money has already been set aside in reserves of capital investment. The city will end up with about 400 foot of beach for the public and residents. Coast Alabama will pay the regular sales tax due, and they estimate it to be around $250,000 to $500,000 a year. While the menu for Coast Alabama is yet to be determined, Mr. McGinnis, owner of Floribama and Coast Alabama, said it will employ approximately 200 full-time workers and 200 part-time. Currently we don't have Mayor Kennan, currently we don't have a gathering place on Orange Beach, even though we have had a lot of state park property, and this offers the community a gathering place in the center of the city on the beach, which is unbelievably value.
So, Paul, when's the last time Mr. McInnes was involved in a public-private partnership?
I have no idea.
The
yeah,
Baldwin Beach Express Bridge. He and Tim James were business partners.
Right,
he got
right,
into
right.
financial trouble with that and talked the city of Orange Beach into throwing in another $12 million that they're going to get back 25 cents per car, right? Take 150 years, then get their money back. So as soon as ink was dry on that, they turned around and sold the damn bridge to an Australian company for $70 million. And that's how people can buy shit that ain't for sale, like the Floribama. When you make out on a public-private partnership. So you are reading this happy-go-lucky article, and I hear fingernails on the chalkboard, my damn hair stands up.
Well, that's what it's supposed to do.
Hide and watch.
That's exactly what it's supposed
And so we're
to do.
going to have a public beach access in front of Floribama number 2. You going to take your kids down there where they're throwing mullets in their thongs? Well, you might, but I don't think I'm going to take mine.
Well, 800.
They got to learn sometime, huh, Rains?
800 foot of beach there is going to be damn impressive, and I'm sure there's going to be people that scrutinize this. But I have seen that piece of property sit there for, oh my God, must be 8-9 years now since they started to do something, and done anything at all. So we'll see how it turns out. Next on, and here's something on in the lagniappe. We push the lagniappe a good bit simply because what the hell else are you?
What else you gonna read?
Okay, and there's in Hidden Agenda, Ashley Trice.
Speaking of, what else you gonna read?
Our agenda is not hidden, and what she basically talks about is just how people can read a particular article in Lagniappe, and then they want to dismiss the whole publication because they don't agree with what's in there. Well, obviously they don't understand what opinion means. That's what it is. It's supposed to make you think, just like the article we were just talking about. I can read it and it looks nice and glossy and everything else, and then Harry can throw in some very basic facts that are all true that make you think, uh-oh, that looks like a red flag. Now, to me, I think Lagniappe does one hell of a service for our community. We don't have anyone else that is willing to touch the subjects that they're willing to touch. So if you want to keep up on what's going on in Baldwin County, I suggest that you get a Lagniappe. If you don't want to read it, you don't think that they're writing the right story, probably can't read anyway, then don't get it.
All right, so let's talk about one more time. Something I want to go over one more time.
Oh, boy.
Lee County Judge Jacob Walker filed an afternoon ruling last week reducing Paul Hubbard's sentence from 48 months to 28 months.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not down necessarily with Mr. Britt and those guys up at the Alabama Political Reporter, but they hit the nail on the head There are two different systems of justice in the state of Alabama, and this case right here proves it. This man came up with the ethics laws. He was the Speaker of the House that said, I'm going to clean this damn place up.
6 felony charges.
No.
12 to begin with, but
Right.
6 he
and
six
then
stuck.
then the Court of Criminal Appeals pairs that down. And then he comes back after he's in jail and gets his sentence reduced. Why?
You want me?
I heard nothing compelling.
You want to hear the next part?
Sure.
All right. Remember, heard it first here on Backstory Podcast. So it went from 40 months to 28 months. Guess what's going to happen now? We'll let a few months go by, and everybody will kind of think of something else, and pardons and paroles are going to come up and pardon him or parole him. Watch and see. He'll never serve the 28 months. I can't wait to see how long it takes. One more article in Lagniappe, and this is what I like about Lagniappe, is you can find anything there from restaurant suggestions to doctors to real estate or whatnot. Lynn Olshue's been writing for them in a 4-part series by Lynn, Life on the Avenue, the story of Mobile's Harlem. And this goes back to the 50s and 60s and talks about the Mobile's Harlem at that time and how progressive it was and some of the things that were going on. It was even listed in the Negro Motorist Green Book. If you saw
I'm familiar with that.
Yeah,
You
if
familiar
you-
with that, Raines?
Oh, yes, the Green Book.
Right, right.
Told him-
That's the movie.
Would tell you safe places to stay.
Traveling the South.
And there's no way I can do justice to Lynn's article because it's real long. You need to get a Lagniappe and read it. I think you'll thoroughly enjoy the article. It's non-political, just a little bit of history about your community. And let's see, I believe that was about it on Lagniappe, where I was going. Yes, Saving Americans Amazon, you had that on there and everything. That's it. You can pick up a Lagniappe at a lot of places where the newsstands have them out free. You can get subscribed to it, or you can get it online. Backstory Podcast and Rip Report and Baldwin County Legal are not paid in any way to promote a Lagniappe. We just feel it's a public service. And if you want to know what's going on, get yourself a copy.
Absolutely.
All right, Raines,
Talk to me.
talk to me. Tell me what you have your ear to the ground about.
A couple of things I'm watching right now, and here's something for you to add to your tackle box. Pay close attention to the wrangling that's going on right now in the emerging Biden administration regarding cabinet positions. That's just a tackle box for you to bait me with next week. Take a good look at that and find out why the political maneuvering that's taking place is actually taking place. Another thing that we're watching on my end is faithless elector laws in the states. There's a number of states that don't have faithless elector laws. Luckily, those states aren't in play. But if you want to get an interesting perspective on the Electoral College, take a look and Google faithless elector laws. That'll give you some understanding as to how the electoral process works and a little bit about what you can and can't do and what the consequences are if you want to be one of these nut jobs who says, you know what, my state voted for so-and-so, but as an elector, I'm going to cast it for somebody else.
And there are criminal penalties for that in some states.
That's what I'm saying. Take a look at it, because not only will you learn what the consequences are, you'll learn what the reasoning is behind it. I'm not going to bore you with a 30-minute explanation of electoral law, but it's fascinating since it's in the news right now. If you want to take a chance and get a look at it, now's the time to do it.
So the Proud Boys joined a defiant Staten Island bar closed over COVID-19 violations. This is just more of the same. More of the same of what I suspect we're going to see as the president continues to rattle the saber and tell people that they should have no confidence in their democracy.
Let me say something about that photo. And I said this before. The reason I never supported the Confederate battle flag to be a part of anything, one of my biggest logical reasons behind that was when it was being waved by white supremacists. Put the photo back up, Harry. When it was being waved by white supremacists, nobody went up to them and snatched it out of their hand and said, hey, it's about heritage, not hate. Whenever it was being exhibited by protesters against segregation, against desegregation, nobody ever says, no, don't use that. It's not about that. Take a look at the flags in this picture. You see those black, white, and blue flags? Those are the back the blue flags. Those are the let's support law enforcement. If you're in law enforcement, if you're not shouting down every single one of these Proud Boys that's carrying that flag, you're enabling it. You're allowing it to become a symbol of anti-democracy. You're allowing it to become a symbol of fascism. You're allowing it to become a symbol of autocracy and hate. Think about that before you go to sleep every night. If I'm at a rally and somebody's putting up swastika flags and somebody's giving Heil Hitler salutes and they're holding the great state of Texas flag, I'm taking that flag away from them. Think about that before you just decide to roll over on the whole back the blue thing, or else my premise will come true in that that's just another fascist label and you're hiding behind it.
So along those same lines, are you familiar with the Alabama State Coat of Arms?
Well, I am now.
Okay, well, there she blows, and of course, where we're sitting now was all of these governmental entities prior to the United States. Well, not prior to, obviously the battle flag of the Confederacy is somewhat concerning to me, and I don't have a problem with it being replaced with the stars and bars or whatever they want to, so that it's historically accurate. But I don't know why we throw away our entire seal.
I think you ought to throw away the whole thing and just put the Alabama A on it.
You
Roll
would,
Tide.
you would say that, you son of a bitch.
Well, listen, this is going to be a trying time. One of the things that has amazed me is how this recent presidential election has pitted people against each other. It's the same thing that Ashley was talking about in her piece, and that, that you would hate somebody, that you would not like a family member or love a family member anymore because one of them voted one way and the other voted the other way, that you're not willing to accept a presidential election that's been held the same way since 1848. It makes me wonder how many have had civics classes or any government classes whatsoever. This is a country that's made of diversity and opinion. And opinion doesn't mean that you have to agree with any of our opinions or anyone else's opinion.
It means you have to
it's an opinion.
abide someone else's having an opinion.
Right. But if you can't cooperate or negotiate, you're not going to get anywhere. And this is what we're talking about with the Baldwin County legislative delegation. If they're pissing off everybody in Montgomery, what do you think is going to happen in Baldwin County? You think they're going to be sending us money down here? Ain't going to happen. So, just because somebody thinks a different way than you, take a deep breath. Everybody disagrees with somebody on something, but there's no sense in losing a relationship or a family member or something like that over.
You're delving into the black iron cauldron of true politics.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah. I know.
That ain't exactly a stew everybody wants to eat from, where they have to understand that, well, yeah, they may be Klan, but they vote.
Listen, I've had two different people come at me, and one of them I've known for quite some time, and starts texting me that I'm a communist and that I'm a traitor and all of this other stuff, and I'm going like, wait a friggin' minute, man. Are you out of your damn mind? I mean, what are you thinking? First of all, I'm an independent. I don't like either party. I think both of them are screwing us, to tell you the truth. But still, you don't call people those type of names, particularly people that are veterans. Oh, I mean, that's just so disrespectful. I'm glad he did it in a text and not to my face. I don't know what if I'd be responsible for my action. But
So, Paul, you know how sometimes in life things just happen, gratuitous things befall us, and I wanted to let you know about this. I posted our video onto a particular private Facebook page, and someone said something derogatory.
oh, go figure.
And it just so happened to be the person that I wrote my first ethics complaint about in 1998, and I gave the son of a bitch both barrels. Now, how long do you think that comment was up on Facebook?
Not long.
Not long at all.
Not
Moments.
Not
It was
long.
removed.
Not long.
So-
People on Facebook, you need to be careful on Facebook, people, on what you believe and what you don't believe.
So there was an article this week in the New Yorker, Paul, of all places, and it says, in Alabama, not having functioning wastewater system is a criminal misdemeanor. Residents can be arrested for substandard septic tanks or even forced out of their homes. And it says, heavy toll on Black Belt's wastewater crisis. Now, this is in New York. They're writing articles about the Black Belt. Not a word about the complete lack of oversight for private sewer utilities with usurious rates.
Right.
And-
Unregulated sewer in the entire county of Baldwin, and they're anticipating more growth in the next 10 years than they've had in the last 10 years, and still totally unregulated.
All right, boys, I'm at the end of my rope. What y'all got going this weekend?
That's it for me. I'm trying to redo my office before I have to go to the hospital, because I ain't going to do anything after that for a while.
What do they figure out what's wrong with you?
I have a minor infection from my last operation.
I was kidding, dude. We don't want to know your HIPAA. You don't want to tell anybody that stuff.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, when they told me what they had to do to fix it, it made me cringe, I'll tell you.
Yeah. They got to go in there and debride stuff. And
No, they have to take it all out and then put it all back in again. Unscrew it, take all the prosthetics out on both sides of the shoulder, and then put it all back in again.
Jesus.
Ouch. Ouch.
Maybe you are a tough son of a bitch. I'm not sure.
This is
But
number
if
15.
You survive that, we'll give you that title. Tough
This
son
is-
of a bitch.
This is number 15.
All right, Raines, how about you? Besides watching the marijuana bill.
I'm paying attention to that. That's paying attention to the stimulus package. It's coming.
Yeah.
Pay attention to the jobs numbers. Pay attention to the GDP. The Christmas consumer spending index is going to be a bellwether for our coming economy. And don't be surprised if Senator Mitch McConnell engineers a recession as an "I told you so" gift to the United States.
Let's hope not.
And those of you who have been listening to us about the COVID Revive plan, today was the last day to get your application in. However, I think Mr. Raines may be correct, and there might be an extension on that. But if you're a small business, go to your computer and look it up. You may qualify on the Revive Plus plan. And that's it for me, Harry. Everybody be safe, and please wear a mask. Think of other people. Just wear a mask. Help us just get through this.
So I got one more question for both of you.
All right.
You first, Paul.
Uh-oh.
At what point do you think there could be a possible second shutdown if we run out of ICU beds completely in the state of Alabama? Do you think that would force the governor's hand?
Absolutely.
And do you think that's going? I mean, I heard today in Texas that there ain't another ICU bed in Houston.
Last I heard, there were 125 cases at the University of Alabama in Birmingham.
And is it that somebody gets infected every 30 seconds or somebody dies every 30 seconds?
Dies every 30 seconds.
Somebody dies every 30 seconds. Here's the thing. I don't think we're going to see any shutdowns. I really don't. We're going to see walkbacks on capacity. Even in North Texas right now, in the northern district of Texas, the governor has issued walkbacks on capacity for bars, restaurants, etc. You're not going to see a lockdown, but you are going to see a walkback on a lot of things, especially when the hard winter hits in January, February. You're going to see that because the hospitals just cannot keep up. If all of their beds are taken up by COVID patients, there's not going to be beds for anything else.
So
and they're going to need it.
Our one article that we didn't talk about, and I just want to briefly go over it. Schoolhouse shock. Baldwin County Moles closure plan as COVID-19 report spike. The same day the Baldwin County School Board reported its highest number of COVID-related absences to date, Superintendent Eddie Tyler, now this is the same dipshit that spent $1 million on cameras that don't work, advised parents he plans to keep schools open until the 2-week Christmas break beginning December 21st. So I don't know why you'd publish something and tell everybody we got bad news, but I'm not going to do anything about it.
I would pay close attention to all public schools extending their Christmas break by a week into the January New Year.
A month. Yeah.
I would see them extending their Christmas break out to 3 weeks, possibly a month, like they did with the spring break in the beginning. That could be a big help to mitigate spread.
Rains when all of the when 2/3 of your bus drivers are out with COVID, you ain't having school, and when half the lunch ladies are out with COVID, you ain't having school. So regardless of what Eddie Tyler, wants to will in this right hand, the chances of it filling up with gold is unlikely.
Truly.
All right. Well, everybody have a good weekend. Paul, give us our outro.
Bye. Be safe. Wear a mask. And those people that don't wear a mask, tell them to go to hell.
You know what they say about a high stepper? No step too high for a high stepper.
Hi, welcome to all of our students, fellows, and board members. This is the second of our three Alabama 101 lunchtime meetings. And today we're lucky enough to have Othni Lathram, who is here. He's going to be talking to us about Alabama's constitution and our government structure. So just very briefly, he is the director of the Legislative Services Agency. And previous to that, he practiced as a lawyer in Birmingham. He was focusing on complex legislation. He received his BS in economics from Auburn and his JD from the University of Alabama. So a big roll tide to that. He is elected as a member of the American Law Institute. He's also a commissioner with the National Conference of Commissioners on Uniform State Laws, and he serves on the Alabama Supreme Court's Standing Committee on the Rules of Civil Procedure. He also is a member of the Executive Committee of the National Conference of State Legislatures and a member of the bar in Alabama and Texas, and he's also able to practice before federal and circuit courts around the country. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Othni, and he's going to take us through.
Really interesting, let me know, and I'll slow down and dwell on the law of a nation or state, establishing the character and conception of its government and laying the basic principles to which its internal life is conformed. That's a pretty fancy legal answer. So I like to shorthand that to essentially say a constitution is a contract between a government and her people, setting forth the terms by which they agree to be governed. What does that mean? What it means is we choose, or our ancestors chose or were forced to be part of the United States, right? And at some point in time, we formed a government. And that government, in order for us to live as kind of a cohesive society, needed to establish some contract between how it was going to operate and the people that live here, right? And so what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is, there's no kind of natural inherent law that governs how fast we should drive. I mean, there's some notions about, what my safety might dictate, what my concern for others might dictate, my risk reward about my own personal well-being. But there's no kind of natural overarching law that governs that. Well, when you're part of a society, you choose, kind of for the global good, I'm going to give up my right to go 100 miles an hour in exchange for government kind of providing roads, keeping them relatively safe, paving them as best they can, giving me means to get from Alabama to California, which I did a few weeks ago on a cross-country drive. And so that's kind of, that's overly simplistic, but that's kind of what we're talking about, is that we agree as people to give up certain rights in exchange for government taking on certain obligations. And so that's what a constitution is. I'm going to ruin the plot and go straight to the end. The Alabama Constitution of 1901 is maybe the worst example of that has ever existed. It's just not what it was intended for. There's some smatterings of that. There's some stuff in there that you can look to and point it out, but it wasn't set up that way. The Constitution of Alabama of 1901 was really set up as what I like to call a super code. So it kind of micromanaged a whole lot of things that aren't part of that basic contract. It put in a whole lot of speed bumps about how government has to operate, because, to be honest, and Alabamians are still a little bit this way 120 years later, it was a pretty distrustful people of government. They didn't really want government to have a whole lot of inherent power. They didn't want the people governing them to make choices, for how their life would be led in a way that would be, that they might disagree with. And so the Constitution of Alabama is a terrible example of that. Contrast perhaps the US Constitution, which is probably one of the better, if not the best example of meeting that definition in the history of mankind. It certainly had some flaws as well, probably more in the implementation of the Constitution than in the words itself, but a very succinct document. This is probably going to fail because of technology too, but if you can see my very well annotated Constitution of Alabama here, this portion of this is actually the Constitution of the United States. This is about a third of the Constitution of Alabama by contrast. The US Constitution and its 27 amendments, which kind of very succinctly lay out, this contract, as opposed to kind of this super code of law in the Alabama Constitution.